Berserk is long. Berserk is hard. Berserk is a story about a struggler who had no home, found one, lost it, then found a new one. Berserk had a beginning, it had a middle, and it will have its end. Maybe. But what will that end be? Will it be a bloodbath? In a rage-induced Gatsu-chan decapitating Griffith? A literal god? No, it will not. This is not how Berserk will end. So, Griffith, or is it Femto? I still see a lot of confusion surrounding who is who, and whether or not Griffith could ever return to his prior, less godly glory. As I interpret it, Griffith died the day Femto was born, but only in the sense of a caterpillar dying the day its butterfly counterpart is born. Evolution, and more importantly, an irrevocable evolution. Griffith, as much as we may miss him, is gone for good, despite his human form returning. Femto, currently masked as his former self, is here to stay. The evil figure that raped Casca, allowed his own family to be slaughtered, and destroyed Guts, his best friend, in more ways than one. Griffith is Femto, and they both are simply the idea of evil. Not literally the idea of evil, but you get the point. When we began this journey, Guts was something else, unrecognizable when placed next to our modern-day Best Dad of the Year award winner. He was filled with immense amounts of hatred, intense rage, unbridled fury, anger, synonyms, fueled by the obvious pain he'd endured just months ago. He was on a quest to find the God Hand, and more importantly, his former leader, his former friend, his former lover. Oh no, that's not right. Griffith. Guts, carrying no semblance of remorse, no empathy, on the surface anyway. His humanity peeks through more times than first recognized, but that doesn't stop his plight. He will find the God Hand, and much sooner than expected, he does. Given the chance and the raw power to do so, nothing would have stopped Guts at this moment from cleaving Griffith in twain. He made the attempt, sword swung, but alas, Griffith was just too powerful. As a reader, knowing the future, or the past rather, we would all come to realize this, for when the eclipse happens, or happened chronologically, Guts had and still has absolutely no chance against Femto in his divine form. Not then, and not now. Something crazy would have to change for this to be possible, and even to this day, Berserk armor in tow, I believe he still lacks the power to face him. So in this moment, Guts took his chance, and missed it. Nothing against him, I mean, he's the epitome of raw human power, but it just isn't enough. He's zapped back to the mortal coil and carries on his way, God-Hand and Griffith still fueling the fire in his singular eye. No matter the odds, he would make it back to Griffith. He would avenge his family, his friends, and his love. The Golden Age. Guts has comrades, makes friends, grows, becomes an exceptional human being, becomes friends with Griffith, whether Griffith admitted so or not. Things happen, time passes, Guts leaves the Hawks to find himself. Amidst all of this, he grows closer to Casca. The love is there, but it doesn't reveal itself fully until Guts returns. Casca, formerly known as the potato, formerly known as Casca, and Guts. Now, I won't be speaking much toward Casca as a character, but I will say that I have missed her. I'm glad she's returned. Guts, on the other hand, staked his entire life on it. After reuniting, they go to rescue Griffith. We all know what happens next. Horror ensues, pure dread and misery. Hell. Just as that love blossomed, it was taken away. By the man they both looked up to, by their leader, by their friend. And Casca becomes Casca no longer. Driven mad by the events of the eclipse, Guts can't even go near her. It might be the saddest thing I've ever seen. Guts thinks it's best to leave. Casca is safe here, he tells himself, so his hunt begins. Thus, the rage segment of his life commences, and towards the end of that, Guts' child appears before him once more. A warning. Casca is in danger. So, we're once again brought back to Godos. Rereading his return chapter, Cracks in the Blade, I realized just how powerful these moments really are. Once again, Inspired put it best. Guts wanted to get rid of a sorrowful feeling by concealing himself in hatred. But what did that actually accomplish? That feeling of sorrow never went away. Guts' rage is finally realized. He left the one thing lasting from before the eclipse because he felt he had to experience his plight alone. Guts has now lost something that was entirely unnecessary to lose. But good things did come from this. Guts realized his futile quest, and perhaps, just for a few fleeting moments, killing Griffith had finally escaped his mind, but his beast lingers. Even with the words parted unto him by the blacksmith, its hunger seemingly insatiable. But ultimately, he cared only for Casca's safety, for her return. Rage wasn't fueling him, it was fear. Fear of something worse than he had already experienced. He lost Casca once, to her own mind, but perhaps now he could lose her for good, because he ran from his feelings, because he ran, again. But he will find her. He has to. He won't make that mistake a third time. He searches, and he searches, and he searches. Finally, she's there, reunited. He fights and fights and fights, but then, Griffith, Femto, still underpowered and still enraged, Guts prepared to have a go at him, but he was stopped. By Casca. No, not by force, not even by word. Just her coos and the sight of her moving toward Griffith was enough to keep him still. I mean, he was enraged all the time. But Casca simply being there stopped him from pursuing that once thought unstoppable hatred. They returned to the haven Guts had set off from. On the Hill of Swords, Casca is once again pulled toward Griffith. This leads Guts to rage once more, but you get the idea. Casca is influencing his feelings more and more each day. Still, when given the chance at no risk of Casca's safety, Guts would be more than happy to do the deed. To protect or to contend. At the beach, Skull Knight grants Guts a bit of knowledge. A chance to mend Casca's mind appears. What? It's possible? To return her to her former glory? To the woman he'd grown to love? This is everything he could have hoped for. He didn't know it was even possible. But now that it may be, it becomes his goal to see it through. Casca is what he cares about, not some vendetta. This is when Guts finalized this change of nature. Perhaps all it took was the chance that she could return. Although even if what Skull Knight says is true, her wish not being his, Guts can still hope for the best. I have a feeling now that Casca is back, if she were to tell Guts that Griffith just wasn't worth it to her, then he would just say okay. He'd just want to be with her. He'd let it go. Now the same is true if she wanted to bury Griffith in the dirt, he'd be more than happy to oblige. But the point is, he cares for Casca, not for Griffith. I have a feeling it'll end up being somewhere in the middle. He won't go to the ends of the earth to find and face Griffith again, unless that's also Casca's wish. Only if Griffith came to them, which he has shown no further interest in doing, would Guts feel the need to try to stop him. But Guts just chasing Griffith and chopping his head off like I see suggested every day would just be the lamest storytelling of all time. And Berserk is not very lame, just as lame and pointless as a second Eclipse type moment occurring would be, which I hear is a fear of a lot of readers, but I entirely disagree. Our gang is here to stay, barring an unfortunate loss of maybe 1 or 2 characters. It just wouldn't make sense given the current progression of everything. We already had the tearing down of Guts' psyche and his subsequent regrowth. Guts is no longer doomed. The character who has doomed himself is the Skull Knight. He took the narrative bullet for Guts in that sense. Wouldn't it be unfulfilling if Guts ended up being exactly the same? To follow down that endless road? No. He has what Skull Knight assumedly lost. People to care for. He won't risk everything Thanos style because, well, he has someone that has already done that for him. Perhaps if Skull Knight had had a Skull Knight figure of his own, maybe he wouldn't have fallen the way he did. Yes, he's ultimately recovered to be the awesome entity he is today, having Guts and Flora to now care for, but he definitely lost something in the last 1,000 years of being the sole foe of the Inhuman, and he can never get that back. Guts, on the other hand, has Casca. He's not going to risk losing her for his own gain, or the rest of his friends for that matter. Assuming it would grant any satisfaction to him at this point anyway, as Cracks in the Blade implies. Now, if Skull Knight didn't exist, I could definitely say there was room for Guts to end up on that path, but fortunately for him, and us, that's not the case. The only way I see something like that happening is if Griffith mows Casca down. How that would make sense, I don't know, but again, how lame would that be? All this build-up, the 20 years working toward the return of Casca, to just be undone? No, Mir is perhaps the best author I know of. He wouldn't shaft his work in that way. Plus, Guts couldn't kill Griffith. I'm sorry. He just lacks the strength of an underworldly being. And for those thinking he may turn into an apostle with the behelit he's holding, well, all I have to say is, he's human. The real deal. Right down to the marrow of his bones. However it does end, it will end happily. Griffith might end up staying alive, but he will get his comeuppance in some way. I guarantee it. Berserk is no longer a story of doom. It's a story of hope. Thanks for watching, Berserko.